What's up, guys? It's Pastor Peter Haas from Substance Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and today I want to teach you how we use Trained Up to skyrocket our assimilation process. I know, like many churches, they have membership classes or they've got a growth track or whatever it is that you use to integrate people into your organization. A lot of people do onboarding stuff, and I want to teach you how to skyrocket the execution of that onboarding and how we use Trained Up to do that. Now, just to give you a little sense about who I am in Substance. So Substance is a multi-site church in Minneapolis. We have a location in downtown Minneapolis, and we have multi-sites all around the metro. And then we also operate internationally. We have a campus in Monterrey, Mexico. And really, what makes us a little bit unique is that we're specialists in reaching young, unchurched people. And so we have a lot of young college students. About 70% of the thousands that come on the weekend are under 34. And so they're highly transient. Very few of them own houses. And so we have there's a lot of natural churn where we're at. And so as a church, we have to become experts at integrating people and integrating them fast. Okay, so for us to have this super lengthy membership process, it gets complicated, and yet at the same time, we need people to know who we are, what we believe. Is this really the right church for them? If they do want to integrate into our church, how do they integrate into our church? How do we get to know them? All these types of things that churches generally struggle with. The education process of members. Well, that was a big issue for us, and especially for like a lot of churches, we had kind of a traditional membership class where people can show up. And of course, we did this with various lengths. It started out, like what do we want to teach our people in order to become members? Well, we want to teach them, what does our small group system look like? What does our statement of faith look like? All these typical things that churches do. And yet, we struggled because it was like once people would start this process, we'd have kind of a newcomers luncheon where they'd start that process, but yet it felt like by the time people finished that process, we would maybe get 5% of the people that started the process to actually finish the process. And so then we thought, let's shorten it. Let's just do 4 events where you can come 4 Sundays in a row. The first Sunday of the month is when you'd start. And of course, even then, the attrition rate by the time people finished it was so high that we just thought, gosh, we're not actually integrating people. And so, and then we thought, well, what if I actually did it personally where I taught the video? And then we ran these videos 4 Sundays. And then we thought, well, what if the video is boring? What if we had a live teacher do it 4 Sundays in a row? And so I would go to our staff and I'd still say, well, what's the attrition rate? And they gave me the metrics. And then I'd be like, well, how do we know what types of people are falling through the cracks and not finishing it? And let's be honest, okay? As leaders, we know it's really hard to get anyone to show up at anything 4 Sundays in a row. And so I started thinking about, this whole issue of metrics and assimilation process. And I'll never forget, I had just found a new TV show on Netflix. And my wife and I pounded through like 3 seasons of that TV show in less than a month. And I know that's kind of embarrassing. Yeah, okay, I liked it. I was really into that TV show. And I stopped myself and I started thinking about the fact that I ingested probably, I don't know, a couple hundred hours of a TV show in a single month. And yet I cannot even get my own church to ingest maybe 4 hours of teaching about what our church is all about. And I thought, what gives? What's the disparity? Well, okay, so a Netflix TV show, let's be honest, they invested a little bit more in high-level production. It's higher quality content. It's story. I think we all love stories more than just raw information. And so if I can give people information and story at the same time. And the other thing is with Netflix, I can do it on my own free time when I want to do it, which is usually later in the evening. I can sit in my chair and I can wear my sweatsuit. Come on. So everybody wants to be able to live in their pajamas, right? So I thought, what if we reinvented our entire growth track, our membership process, with kind of this Netflix thing in mind? What if we took these 4 weeks worth of content and turn it more into like a reality show. And so we actually converted it into 8 little reality show-ish modules where we're giving people information, but it's in a story, kind of like, hey, come with me, Pastor Peter, I'll give you a slice of my life while telling you a little bit about our church. Make it fun, make the episodes memorable, and then put them online. And what we did is we took our 4-week growth track and actually we reduced it into 2 weeks, okay? And I know that sounds a little crazy, but here's kind of how it works, okay? So when people come to our church, we always tell them, come to step 1 of our growth track, and they show up and we sit them down at tables with guidance counselors who get to know them a little bit. And what we do is we set them up with Trained Up. We teach them how Trained Up works, and we tell them, hey, you're gonna get to hang out with Pastor Peter in this kind of reality show style thing. And once you do these 8 modules, we're going to email you to come to step 2 of the growth track, and we're going to actually sit down with you and integrate you into our church. So all you have to do is commit to, once they show up to this first event, all they have to do is commit to watching Netflix at home, or Trained Up at home as it were, and then at the end of that, come to our last little event, okay? And so then what they would do is they would come to this step 1 of our growth track, we'd hook them up with Trained Up, and then we'd send them home to do this reality show integration process, right? So, and most people, it actually shocked me how many people would just Netflix it. They would just go through all 8 episodes within a matter of a couple days. Within 1 week, they would ingest all 4 hours worth of content, and then immediately Trained Up would email them, and we could personally invite them to come to step 2, and then they would sit down with a guidance counselor who we had already taught them everything they needed to know about our church through these modules. And then all we could do is we'd sit down with them with a guidance counselor and say, hey, now that you know everything about our church, or at least a good amount about our church, here's how we can do small groups. And oh, so you're a single mom with 2 kids? Okay, let me help you find, this is the ideal church service at the ideal campus, and here are the top 5 small groups we would recommend that you attend, and here are the top 3 ministry teams we'd recommend you to attend this month. And then we could actually sit down, this guidance counselor could basically custom design their integration into our church with a face-to-face, personable approach to getting involved in our church. And so, basically, so this is kind of how Trained Up actually enabled us to shift how we did integration. Number 1, Trained Up actually gave us integration metrics. We knew immediately where people were stalling out. And so, for example, people were going through our Trained Up curriculum, and we noticed that a lot of people stalled out at week 4. And we realized it was because what I did for week 4 was actually too boring. And so we refilmed it, made it more exciting, a better hook into it that would allow them to go through step 5. And so, or like once, let's say somebody gets really busy in their life, or maybe somebody close to them, there's a tragedy and they just don't have the time to continue going through our Trained Up modules. Well, immediately we would know who has stalled out, and it would enable us to email them and say, hey, we noticed you haven't done a module in a while, and so, hey, if there's anything we can do to help. And it would a lot of times be the very thing that they needed to jumpstart them, to keep them going through the steps. And so it actually gave us metrics, not merely on the attrition rate, but on who specifically in our church. We knew exactly who started the process and didn't finish. And if they didn't finish it, is there a reason why? You know, like, did Pastor Peter offend you some Sunday? Or did your life just get busy? Or was the module boring? We can actually follow up with them and find out why, and have real metrics that allow us the ability to kind of prod people along or encourage people along. Okay, so it gave us completion metrics. The second thing Trained Up did that just revolutionized our integration process is it increased our ability to convey more information on their terms. In other words, rather than making them come and figure out what to do with their kids, do they need to find babysitting? And maybe it's just, I think just coming on our terms, people are busy. They got a lot of stuff going on. And for them to be able to say, you know what, I can sit in my chair in my pajamas, do it at my pace, or the pace that my spouse is capable of doing without it getting all complicated. And so we were able to give people more information in a shorter window of time in a way that was fun for them. Third thing that Trained Up did, this approach to using Trained Up for our integration process, is that our staff who facilitate our growth track, they were able to shift their focus from teaching and indoctrination to actual assimilation. In other words, rather than just teaching mediocre version of a content that I could create, instead they were able to focus on being guidance counselors and making sure that people were constantly being invited throughout the process. Rather than worrying about getting people to show up or focusing on a talk, they were actually able to focus on the person. Let me get to know you. Let me actually figure out who you are so that way I know, of all small groups in our church, this is the one for you. Of all ministry teams in our church, this is the demographic that would be custom fit for you. In other words, it shifted from indoctrination to assimilation and allowed us to focus on what really matters, and that's inviting people to that next step. Because let's be honest, okay, let me give you an example. I heard dozens of messages on fasting, but did I ever fast and pray? No. Not until my small group leader invited me, hey, this Monday, would you fast with me? And then I'm like, yeah, okay, now I'll do it. You see, information wasn't my problem. It was invite. It was actually having someone who was able to get into my life and say, let me tell you why fasting doesn't work for you. It's because you're trying to do too much, or you're trying to do too long of a fast. And it was somebody custom designing the information for me. And so really what Trained Up has done for us is through these types of shifts, through giving us metrics, through giving us the ability to convey more information on their terms, and giving us the ability to focus on being guidance counselors rather than indoctrinators. It just enabled us to our execution rate was significantly greater, and really that's what I want for your organization. And so if you want more information on how we use Trained Up to do it, just give us a call at Substance Church. But honestly, I really believe that Trained Up has not only just dramatically changed our integration, but it's actually fundamentally causing us to rethink the way we do discipleship in our church. Discipleship is not about information, and I don't want the information aspect of your discipleship process to get caught simply because you don't have a platform to create metrics and to help your staff focus on the right things, which is the invite culture. Does that make sense? So anyway, with all that said, I'm so glad you got to hang out with me a little bit, and I hope that this information helps you guys improve the execution and assimilation in your organizational culture. Love you guys.